Blog number 65. Now I realize that this blog was written at the end of the summer of 2015, and as it is not the summer of 2016 yet, this blog and some of the things I reference will seem a little out of place, but it is the next blog in the series that I wrote, so I'm going to go ahead and read it so I can keep things in order. So this is blog number 65, and it's called "A Number 2 Pencil is Not Required." Now that another summer has flown by and a new school year is upon us, I started to think about what the worst part of my academic performance was. I would have to say that the hardest and the most challenging part revolved around taking tests. Any kind of test, really, no matter what the subject was. It really didn't matter because I would experience a brain freeze that was equivalent to sucking down a 32-ounce slushie in about 15 seconds. I don't know if that is actually possible, but if it were, I would imagine that the person doing it would have a major head rush. The panic would first start to grip my young mind when I heard from the adult authority in my classroom that the test would require a number 2 pencil. This statement was said with such surety, with such a commanding voice, that I was utterly convinced that if I had anything but the required number 2, say even a pencil that was a 2.1, that it would fail in every aspect of life from this point on. Next came the challenge of putting my name on the paper before the test could even begin, which felt to me to be some kind of pre-test. Like the people who had put this standardized test together were trying to first determine if I was even intelligent enough to even take their test. I doubt very much that it would even have helped at this point if the multiple choice portion of the test had begun, because I still more than likely would have gotten my name wrong. I would have panicked, attempted to swat away the black spots that were dancing before my eyes, and picked choice number E, which stated that A, B, C, and D were all correct. I would have been playing the odds at this point, because what I had discovered was that usually when there was a choice that would combine several answers, that this choice would invariably seem to end up being the correct one. Unless, of course, it was a trick question designed to make you think. These kind of questions were the worst, because then I will always find myself trying to work out in my head if this particular teacher was crafty enough to do that sort of thing. Everything would be factored into the equation, from what kind of car they drove, who they hung out with while monitoring the lunchroom, who they spoke with in the hall, and what they snacked on at their desk while we were supposed to be reading. I was the original profiler long before that word was tossed around on every major cop show on television. Really, though, the only legitimate chance that I would have had at this point to get my name correct would have been if this part of the pretest would have been true or false. Well, at least I would have had a 50-50 shot. And then it's exactly what my SCA feels like much of the time. A true or false, black or white, 50-50 shot at getting it right. Like my cerebellum is saying that it doesn't matter that I stayed up half the night reading The Finer Points of Walking or Clear Speech for Dummies, that it will decide how things work, and that the best I can do is just guess and hope that I'm right, or at the very least that my body is grading on a curve. It feels that way much of the time, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. Life with a handicap does not have to feel like a physical true or false test, like there's only one way to accomplish a task. It does not have to become a multiple choice test. It doesn't have to become any kind of test unless you really want it to be. In my life with a taxi along for the ride, I have discovered that it has become about continually striving to learn new and better ways to deal, to struggle, and to cope with daily activities. I have learned that my life has become one in which I continually have to adapt. The questions I find are always the same: how I will get dressed, how I will eat, how I will get from one point to the other point, etc., etc. But I find that the answers continually change and are never wrong. Just every one of them becomes a different way to solve the same problem. And the best part of this whole thing, a number 2 pencil is not required.